Hey everyone, I'm Rocco from Spruce, here to present on Signing with Ethereum. So Signing with Ethereum was never standardized for a very long time, and a lot of different apps and services had a way of authenticating users by just using their key pairs or their Ethereum accounts. And recently with the support of the Ethereum Foundation, Signing with Ethereum was standardized over the course of time, but kind of getting into the meat of it, a lot of the reason behind the standardization was like, how do we allow users to basically own their own identifiers that they control? Unlike signing with Google, signing with Facebook, all these big login giants, together we'll defeat big login. If Google were to ever, pull the rug on you for your Gmail account, you wouldn't just lose access to all the services you've ever signed into Google with. You'd also lose access. You wouldn't just lose access to Google services. You'd also lose access to everything you signed into Google with. In this case, how do we provide an alternative, give users something that they control using their key pairs to authenticate with? Kind of going into it, specifically, some of the main things we focused on when standardizing Signing with Ethereum were around the Web3 space. Now, you may have seen this Connect Wallet button literally everywhere in the space. When you just connect a wallet and you establish a connection between the summed app and your wallet, it's quite dumb. It doesn't remember anything about a user. You can kind of serve the user certain transactions, but at the end of the day, it can be spoofed, which is why when services want to authenticate a session right now, they'll typically make you sign a message. So on OpenSea, for example, when you connect your wallet, you could do some basic transactions around NFTs, but the second you want to save some information about yourself, such as a profile name or a banner, et cetera, they'll make you sign a message to prove you actually own the private key behind that account. And it'll typically say, you're signing into OpenSea, you're logging into this service, and every different dApp had a different way of doing it. And with this, just introducing this concept here of connected Carl, he restarts the game every time. So imagine you started a video game, you got into it, and then the second you kind of close things out, that was it. Like that was the end of that game. The game remembered nothing about you, where you ended up, what was your last save point. Whereas we have Session Sam over here who actually signed the message and authenticated with a service that has some session information about that user who saved the game basically that remembered things about Session Sam over here. Now, as mentioned before, different services and apps did this in a variety of different ways. And part of the reason for standardization was to get to that common message format that was served to users that had a couple of goals. First was that it was human readable. So a user, when signing the message, even if there weren't custom interfaces yet, a user could look at this and say, okay, it's telling me what I'm doing. I'm signing into this service by signing this message. That at a base level, most wallet clients had some way of serving the user this message that they can read and do something with. But actually, these examples on the left were actual examples seen throughout the ecosystem. My personal favorite was just like login in all caps. Just thrown in a wallet at a user and just said, yeah, sign the message. In this case, it's bringing together all these original formats and giving users a common format to basically understand what they're doing, add a couple of things like including the domain that they're actually accessing, including a nonce that had at least 8 characters for security reasons, and even expiration times so the session would expire at a certain point if desired by the app. It's very unopinionated. Now, very basically, as mentioned before, EIP 4361 was created just literally to get the job done. How do we just make that common signing format? How do we have a rigid grammar to make sure that nothing malicious could kind of be added to it by some party? And just kind of the list of fields that are required or optional as part of the spec. And one of the biggest reasons why it was standardized was actually for end users. So now if wallet clients, and I'm going to keep calling it wallet clients because of that first presentation, I need to make sure I keep saying that, have a common standard to follow to then serve interfaces based on that standard. Because it knows what's coming in, it knows a message formatted this way is coming in, the wallet can then parse that, and if it's a valid CWE message or a valid sign with Ethereum message, can then serve that custom interface saying, you are signing in. That it's no longer for the user just sign the message to authenticate. Now it's actually, you're signing into this service. So the user now knows even more about what they're doing from the wallet side. And this gives wallets like, okay, when we expect this message format, serve this interface to a user, rather than just sign the message. And other things we get out of this too is things like domain binding. So if the user's on a different website than the actual thing they're signing, the wallet could then warn the user and say, hey, you're being phished right now. Don't sign into the service. It's malformed, etc. I think one of the most interesting things about all this is what else can you do with your keys and the whole design space around that. That's not just kind of transactions. You're not sending money anywhere. Rather, it's all these things around signing and authenticating. What else can you do now that you have a key pair with a wallet? And lastly, I just kind of want to open it up, because we'll probably talk more about this later, is a couple open design questions, like key management. How do we make managing keys as easy as reset password? Because users now, a lot of them do reset their passwords often. And if you lose your private keys, it's not a good time. Public information, private keys, how do you basically prevent information leakage when you authenticate with services with a certain wallet to not let that service know certain things about you, maybe your on-chain activity? How do you maybe have one key that you use for logging in? What does it look like standardizing those interfaces? And then lastly, how do we then move on to what data do you share with that app or service when you actually authenticate? And this is a very wide open blank canvas. And with that, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.